So, you're ready to begin mastering that great project? Well, no pressure, but this really is the very last stage and chance for you to get things right. In Mastering for Broadcast, there are three main goals. The first is to deliver a master that's in the same range consistently with other programs being broadcast, so you don't want something that's too loud or too soft. Secondly, you want to make sure that all the elements in the mix can be really clearly heard with a proper balance of frequencies. And thirdly, you don't want any unintentional distortion or phase issues. Mono checks are absolutely critical when you're mastering for broadcast. And the key to accomplishing all three objectives is to get your levels right. In this video, I'm going to show you how. Now, getting the right levels during mastering isn't simply a case of plugging in a compressor or a limiter and squashing that signal until there are absolutely no dynamics left. It's actually all about finding the right balance between the dynamics and loudness while comparing the track with reference tracks. In other words, other material that's going to be broadcast and played out on that same channel. Now, there are many different platforms for broadcast today, and each platform uses different loudness targets as their zero or loudest reference point. And the new industry standard to measure loudness is called LUFS, loudness units relative to full scale. I'll just go through some of them. iTunes Store is minus 12 LUFS, iTunes Radio minus 16 LUFS, YouTube is minus 13 LUFS, Spotify minus 12 LUFS, CD, your normal audio CD, minus 9 LUFS. Radio is typically at minus 18 LUFS, and then for TV or speech, it's either minus 23 or minus 24 LUFS. So this is what we call a target level, and mastering to one of these target levels is up to you really. It's arguably not necessary, but really bear in mind that the material that you're working with will be adjusted to one of these levels or others at some point after you release it, whether you like it or not. So what should be your ultimate target level? Well, the answer really to a large degree is tied to the system that's going to be used to deliver the music to the consumers. So if you know in advance that the master is going to be streamed, which will almost certainly mean that the delivery service will do a sample rate conversion, loudness normalization, and possibly encoding to a lossy format such as MP3, you are going to have to then consider to lower the output ceiling of your main mix significantly, really depending on the material, how loud you're trying to push it, and of course your target bitrate. So in any digital recording, the concept for your levels for mastering for broadcast is quite straightforward to remember. There is absolutely nothing above zero. And this will apply whether you're using 0 dB, 0 dB VU, 0 dB FS full scale, or 0 LUFS, or 0 LKFS. If you send a signal above that 0 point to your digital to analog converter, it'll absolutely play the data, but since in digital it can't compute anything beyond that zero ceiling, all that's going to happen is that you're going to get a clipped or a square waveform, which is simply unintentional and unwanted distortion, and it's going to compromise the quality of your master. The way that we work with achieving these targets is by using our multimeters. And in Logic Pro X, I've got a beautiful multimeter. It gives me LUFS, RMS, true peak. I have a correlation meter. I have a goniometer. I also have a spectrum analyzer. And these are all incredible, useful tools because these metering plugins allow for the visual cues that they indicate if I'm hitting my target, if I'm over my target, or if I am below my target. So we can then really focus in on where the troubled areas are, and we can then make adjustments. So in this particular example, I'm just going to show you how to literally read the meters for the visual cues. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it's your ears that are going to tell you if it sounds right, it is right. And you just got to watch your meters to help give you an idea of what's going on inside of your workstation. So let's have a look. I've got a fantastic project here. It's an advert which is going for online platform as well as for radio. So I've got two different delivery systems, 2 different delivery platforms. And I've opened up my multimeter. Now, let's have a look at it. I've set my target. I've got a beautiful little line over here to sit at minus 14, and then I'm going to read my lufs. And I've also set it to read true peak and RMS here so that I can see if there's any intersample distortion that I have to look at. So I've got a voiceover. I've got a little bit of a video happening as well. So I've got something that's going onto YouTube and then something that's going out for online radio as well. So I've set my target to minus 14, which is just slightly lower than the YouTube level requirement of minus 13 lufs. But then YouTube will normalize my file to their output level. And for the online radio, we like to work at minus 18 lufs. So I'm going to set the level to be in between sort of minus 14 and minus 18. I'm looking for that kind of consistency. And if it's a little bit too loud, then obviously when it gets to radio, the online system, they'll adapt it and normalize it to their level. The big thing about radio in particular is that there's not a heck of a lot of dynamics. And so you can really kind of squash those dynamics in order to achieve that loudness. But, you know, we still want the listener to have a really great experience, and we want them to be able to feel the emotion of what is being conveyed as well. So we can't just squash the life out of something using our compressors. And we also have to be sensitive to the fact that there are level requirements that we need to meet. So let's have a listen and let's watch the meters over here. So we're aiming for a consistency around about that target level. Sometimes it'll go over, sometimes it will go under. We have our integrated loudness over here, and that basically just indicates what the average level is. So we want to keep our eye on that because it's going to give us a really good idea of the consistency of our levels. All right, so let's have a listen from beginning to end and watch our meters.
In a world where average is not an option, some things shouldn't be imagined. They should be a reality. As a sound designer, animator, or game developer, you need assets that bring your creations to life. There is such a place with ready-to-use, out-of-the-box, innovative, creative sound effects. You know the thrill of seeing your design complete. We have the sound effects you need. Visit raponline.net.
Yeah, everything's looking pretty good. You could see in the goniometer over here, you could see that there was almost a horizontal line there, and that correlation meter was moving sort of towards the center and even heading to dipping just below that zero, which was starting to indicate some phasing trouble. So it wasn't too bad. It was just coming in and out. I'd like to have a listen to that in mono just to make sure that what we're doing is spot on, that we're not losing anything when we flip it out to mono, because there's a lot of playback systems that are actually still playing out in mono. So I'm going to actually just switch the whole mix into mono and have a listen again. And we're going to have a close look at this goniometer just to make sure that what we're hearing and what we're seeing isn't causing a problem. So here we go.
In a world where average is not an option, some things shouldn't be imagined. They should be a reality. As a sound designer, animator, or game developer, you need assets that bring your creations to life. There is such a place with ready-to-use, out-of-the-box, innovative, creative sound effects. You know the thrill of seeing your design complete. We have the sound effects you need. Visit raponline.net.
Okay, great. So we can see that when it's played back in mono, that everything is looking and sounding pretty consistent and normal as well. When we have a look at the meters over here, these lufts meters in particular, you can see that the integrated loudness is sitting at around about 18, minus 18 lufts. Now, that's great for radio, and we've hit it really nicely for our online radio campaign. But when it comes to the YouTube, I have a little bit of level that I can push. So what I would do is I would then export the file as two different files. One mastered version for YouTube, in which I would actually go to my limiter and I would make adjustments and just give a little bit more a level boost, probably a dB or so, because when you convert from your uncompressed format to a lossy or compressed format, you must remember that unintentional distortion can happen. So I'm really happy that I've got quite a lot of headroom there. Because headroom is always something that we can utilize to our benefit, especially when we're looking to just make the whole project sound great, preserve the dynamics, but also be commercially competitive in its loudness. And then, of course, I would bounce one out with just being the movie file, which would be up for YouTube, and the other I would bounce out for being the audio file only, which would be then for the online radio. So as it is right now, it's ready to be bounced out for online radio, and I would then definitely just give a little bit more level so we can see those lufts meters over there. Just push a little bit closer to our minus 14 or so mark, and then of course when YouTube comes to normalize our files, we've got enough headroom and it's not going to introduce distortion. Well, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you again in the next video.
In a world where average is not an option, some things shouldn't be imagined. They should be a reality. As a sound designer, animator, or game developer, you need assets that bring your creations to life. There is such a place with ready-to-use, out-of-the-box, innovative, creative sound effects. You know the thrill of seeing your design complete. We have the sound effects you need. Visit raponline.net.